Hi there, this is Dani. The channel is You and Me Living Free, and in today's video we are in Yuma, Arizona, and I'm going to tell you a couple of little stories about my time in Yuma. My time in Yuma was very short. I'm not going to play the tour guide here and tell you what we're looking at. Basically, there's only a couple things in Yuma that are on everybody's tour lists of things to see, and that is historic downtown and the Gateway Park, and I'll take you there next. And then there's an old prison that you can go through, but I did not do that. And then I'll take you out to the BLM land where I stayed overnight. So let me just tell you about Yuma. I did not really want to go to Yuma. But Sharon and I kind of planned on going, and Sharon really wanted to cross the border into Los Algodones, and I told her that I would do that with her even though I really didn't kind of want to. So I went to Yuma with like maybe a bit of a not quite as good of an attitude as I normally have when I am going somewhere new that I really want to explore. There just wasn't anything about Yuma that was really calling to me. It was a little bit warmer there, and I was thinking, why not? But at the same time, my intuition was pretty clear that it was not a strong yes to go in the first place. And then I really should have kind of just stayed home. I loved this little historic downtown I was looking forward to, but here's the deal. I know about Yuma from like old westerns and stuff, right? So I was expecting the historic downtown to be really old, like 1800s old. Well, apparently there was a big flood, and everything you saw in historic downtown had been built in the 1920s and later. So that was a little bit of a letdown. I did go to Yuma in part because they had a couple of Walmarts, and I was in serious need of a Walmart, so I used the Walmart, went shopping, stayed at Cracker Barrel the first night. There's only one Cracker Barrel in Yuma, but let me just give you a note. If you are planning on going there, bring the ear plugs, because it is right next to the highway and it was very loud. And even though I'm pretty decent at sleeping next to highways now, it still bothered me somewhat. Not a lot, but somewhat. It was still quite loud. So then I went into town the next morning, did my little exploring, went for this walk at Gateway Park, and then went out to the BLM land. So here's our little walk, Gateway Park, and it was a nice little stroll. It's very well maintained. You're along the river, so I love, walking next to the river and stuff. This was probably the high point of my trip. Let me say this about Yuma also. I don't know what it was, but my GPS kept really messing me up. Even to get to Gateway Park, first of all, I had on Apple Maps. Apple drove me across this big overpass that you can see in this shot and told me I had reached my destination when I was at the middle of the overpass. I'm like, okay, Apple Maps, not helpful at all. I had to get on Google Maps, which I do not like. I don't like the way Google Maps gives directions. I find it more confusing, not as straightforward, and it bothers me, but every once in a while I have to use it. Well, I had to use Google Maps to find this place, and so everything worked out okay. It wasn't that big of a deal, right? But you know how when you're not in the flow and you kind of keep coming up against things, you kind of keep hitting against things? I was literally at this point kind of thinking, this has been okay, but maybe I should just go back to quartzsite. Well, Sharon was already at the BLM land that we were going to go camping on. And so I was like, you know what? I can give it a chance just overnight. And I kind of talked myself into it, even though I knew I didn't really want to. So then I'm heading out to BLM land, and along with the GPS not guiding me to Gateway Park, it also would not take me to the BLM land. There was something about the GPS around Yuma that mine did not want to work. Sharon's acted up a little bit from here and there, but mostly she used it to get right to the BLM land, and I could not. So the first thing I did was I plugged in the BLM, and I went straight from iOverlander to the map, and it told me it was going to take me an hour and 22 minutes to get there. I texted Sharon, I'm like, how many miles is it? She said about 10, took me maybe 15 minutes. And I'm like, okay, well, this says an hour and 22 minutes. So that's clearly not right. So then I went into Apple Maps and I got the same thing. It was completely messed up. Was taking me somewhere different. And so finally I thought, well, I'll just get a little bit closer and then I'll plug it in and then I'll see if it will take me there. Well, I got a little bit closer and then I just plugged in Fortuna Pond BLM, which is what it was called on iOverlander. So I plugged that in and it gave me directions that seemed right. It seemed like in the right location. I followed those directions. They had me on the side of a big road telling me I had arrived and I needed to walk to my destination. This was not helpful. So eventually, Sharon got directions from the man who was camping next to her and sent me written directions from 95. I took those directions the old-fashioned way, and I finally reached my destination. Okay, good news, right? But now that I get here, I don't really like it. Okay, so it's this little pond, but it's full of people who, let's say most of them have been here longer than 14 days, just to put it mildly. And since you had quite a few people who have been here literally for months, there wasn't much space. Look how close everyone is together. They were really packed together. And then you have people like this every once in a while, which is just, there's trash all over this campsite and it's just kind of blowing around. And then Sharon and I are going for a walk, trying to get some exercise. There are these two little dogs. And it sounds comical to me right now, but I was in so much irritation at the moment. So we walked by them and these two little dogs are tearing out, especially this one, like they're just going to bite us. You know, they're being very protective of their owners and of their territory. But even as we were way past the territory, this dog was following us, barking at us. And I've been bitten by a Cairn Terrier before. It was my grandma's dog. And it's not nothing. I'm telling you, when you get bitten by these dogs, even when though they're quite, they're not huge, but I said, please get a hold of your dog. Please get control of your dog. And there's just three people just sitting back there, just laughing like it was funny. See, this kind of attitude, this kind of stuff, it doesn't sit well with me. And I know there's a lot more people who are more laid back who would have no problem, and that's fine. But the point is I was already irritated. I was already knew I shouldn't be here. I was already in all of this kind of frustration, and I had been, banging up against all this resistance because I talked myself into coming. I didn't really want to go, and it was all coming up for me. And then I was, of course, beating myself up, like, you knew you didn't want to come and you did anyway. And this is what happens. Things do not go your way. Things do not go smoothly. You do not enjoy it. So when are you going to learn to follow your intuition? So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to follow my intuition. So I have this wonderful learning experience day in Yuma and this whole night at the campground and the walk and everything. And then I'm unloading, I'm figuring things out where I went wrong and everything. And then there is this bird that comes right outside my window and he just sits there and he comes up a few times. And finally I got the camera out and I snapped this photo really quick. And I thought, he is a sign that everything's not gonna be okay. Everything already is okay. This is perfect and everything is great. And I thought, he's a sign. And then I thought, you know what? If he's a sign, I want him to come back to me. I want him to come back again, because he kept only sitting there for a second and then he'd fly away and then he'd come back and then he'd fly away. So I said, if he's a sign, I want him to come back. And then look what he did. He came and he just sat there for me. And I'm going to cry as I'm saying this. How silly is that? But it was a beautiful sunset then and sunrise the next day, and just being there and appreciating it. And the fact that I was leaving, the fact that I was ready to go and I was leaving. And it meant saying goodbye to Sharon because we're on different paths, and that was kind of the last time we were going to be together for this trip. And so it was a little emotional anyway. So when am I not emotional, right? Is that the question you're asking? Because I ask that all the time too. When am I not emotional? But that's okay. And you made it to the end of another video. I want to thank you so much for being here. Thank you if you're watching. Thank you to subscribers. Thank you to my patrons. I'm sending a ton of love to each and every one of you, and I'll catch you next time. Bye for now.